Some cases, bigger is always better.
So how much do you believe that where we left off? How long ago did it stop?
It just started now.
Oh, it never started.
No, it didn't have the password
So
until now.
what do we do, start over?
I think we go with the,
Okay.
where
I'll
we're at
just-
in the agenda.
We,
Your microphone isn't.
sorry for the delay. We encountered a electronic problem. Currently, we have finished with the first session. We adjourned, and due to an organizational meeting, Tammy Deegan, our secretary, board secretary, is going to take the meeting over from here.
Okay, so I will call this meeting to order, 6:38. And I will take a motion to approve or amend the second agenda, if anybody has anything. All right. And a motion to accept this one.
I make a motion, we accept the agenda as printed.
And a second.
I will second it.
All right, any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the first thing we need to do is the election of the officers. So I will take nominations for the board president.
I'll nominate Gary Witt for board president.
Do I just need to get a second?
Not according to policy.
Okay, tell me what to do.
You asked for a vote. Or a motion.
Yeah, you could ask if there's any other nominations.
Yeah.
All right. Any other nominations for the board president?
I make a motion, nomination cease.
I'll second that.
All right. Do we need to do a roll call vote?
You just do a vote, just,
Oh, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, Gary Witt is the reigning president, and you can take over.
Thank you. We're moving on to the second part of A, an election of officers. We're going to call for the vice president nominations.
I nominate Ken.
Russ Coons nominated Ken Cook. Any other nominations? Okay. All those in favor of having Ken Cook elected as our vice president indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Thank you. We'll set the time and the date and the place for our monthly meetings. Currently, we are meeting here the second Monday of every month at 6:30 in the City Council chambers. Is there any questions? We do have to approve that. Any suggestions?
It works for me to continue.
Does it work good for the bill paying since we've changed and stuff? Better? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Cook. Is there a second?
Support.
Second by Mr. Coons. Any other information? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Thank you. Motion carried. Under C, we set the depository limits of our banks and for the district funds. It is suggested that in Iowa State Bank in Ireton would be 4 million. The First State Bank in Haywarden would be 5 million. People's Bank in Haywarden would be 3 million. And Bankers Trust would be 1 million. Now, those are staggered from year to year, I believe. I don't think they are the same year after year, unless that's not the intent. So is there any questions, any changes? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept C.
Make
All
that
right.
a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Coons. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gregg. Any further discussion before we take the vote? If not, all those in favor of accepting the depository limits for our banks of our district funds as stated in our agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Under D, we will establish committee assignments. They are negotiations. We have the Sioux County Conference Board. Well, excuse me, we have negotiations, which was previously Mr. Cook and myself. We have Sioux County Conference Board, which was previously Mr. Gregg. We have the Iowa School Board Association Legislative Delegate, which was myself. We have the Building and Grounds Committee, which was Ken Cook and Danny Grader. We have the Transportation Committee, which was previously Mr. Coons and Mr. Gregg. And we have the Bill Auditor, previously Mr. Cook. So, where do we, any suggestions on any changes or anything with with what we're doing?
Negotiations includes all of us, so I don't know if you want
Right.
to make that change or not. If we're going with
If we're going with,
IBB,
yeah, if we're going with IBB, most of the time, most of the time, most of the members are here. So I guess what we'll do is negotiations, we will mark that as IBB, interest-based bargaining, and then all members are delegates. Is that okay, Tammy? Okay. We'll move on to the conference board for Sioux County. It was previously Mr. Gregg. Any suggestions or changes? Would you accept it again, Mr. Gregg?
Yes.
Okay. The Iowa School Board Association Legislative Delegate was myself. You want that to remain? Okay, that'll be fine. So it'd be Gary Witt. Are we going too fast, Tammy?
I'm with you.
Okay, that's fine. Just tell me to slow down. Buildings and Grounds Committee, which was previously Mr. Cook and Mrs. Grader. There will be a change in that, and we'll talk about that later on tonight. So, any changes with Ken? Okay,
I would be willing to serve on that with Ken.
good, good. So, and just so you know, I'm going to vote, we'll vote on all of these since it's under one item. The the Building and Grounds Committee will comprise of Mr. Cook and Mr. Gregg. Transportation Committee, which was previously Mr. Coons and Mr. Gregg. Russ, are you willing to be on
Okay
there?
with that, yep.
So do you want to be on there, or do you,
Probably don't need me on there, do you?
okay? So then we'll entertain, with Mr. Gregg's removing himself from that, we'll entertain the possible board, the new board member, to look at that. Then we also have the bill auditor. I think due to the work he's done and knowing how to do it, I would like to see that stay with Mr. Cook. Thank you. So we are done with the committee assignments. Do we have anything else with this? If not, I would accept the motion to accept them as they were presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Coons. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? You have deer in the headlights look there, Mr. Cook.
No, I have no other question.
Okay. All those in favor of the the committee assignments as we have discussed and are a part of the agenda, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have the official newspaper, which was previously the Hayward Independent and the Ireton Examiner. That's our hometown. Not to short you, Mr. Steve, but anyway, anything there, change it?
Make a motion, we leave it the same.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Coons, seconded by Mr. Gregg, to leave the official newspaper as it's been. Any discussion? All those in favor of the Hayward Independent Ireton Examiner as our official newspaper for the meetings, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Appoint legal counsel, which was previously Steve Avery of Cornwall, Avery, Bornstead, and Scott.
We have investigated another one.
We used to, do you recall the previous,
Yeah, it was.
before Mr. Richardson? Same one that Akron and Westfield
Hanks.
utilized.
Hanks,
Yes.
Jim Hanks.
Jim Hanks. I've been very comfortable working with Mr. Avery over the time period, and the availability of him and his direct answers so far.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, he answers within a short period of time when you call him, so.
Very much so.
Any other discussion with that? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we keep Steve Avery as our legal counsel.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Coons. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of Steve Avery being our legal counsel indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have authorization of check writing responsibilities under the general fund and the schoolhouse fund, food service fund, and management fund. We have the business manager, board president, and the superintendent. And then under the activity fund, we have the business manager, board secretary, the middle high school principal, and the activities director. Any changes, any questions concerning this?
I got one question. Is there a limit, or is there a certain amount where we need to have 2 signatures?
Yeah.
They do, okay.
Do we need the superintendent on our activities count?
We haven't before, apparently.
I think with that 2 responsibilities, I think I'm comfortable with just the activities director and the board secretary or the business manager with that. I think 3 might make it a little bit more difficult.
Your feelings, Ken?
Well, that's fine. I just thought
Ask him.
maybe because he's superintendent, he should be on there.
Right.
And if he doesn't want to be on there, that's okay.
I don't remember since my tenure on the board that we've changed anything with that I recall anything like that, so.
Well,
Okay. Okay, under G then, I'd entertain a motion,
so move.
and the motion is to accept it as it's presented on the agenda.
That's correct.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any other questions, discussion? If not, all those in favor of leaving the check writing responsibilities as they're listed on our agenda the same, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Under H, we have appoint child abuse investigators. We have a level 1, which is our school nurse, Ms. Pam Harvey. And we have level 2, which is Hayward and Police Chief Mike DeBryan. Is there any changes with that? Okay.
Yep.
I would entertain a motion if there's no discussion.
I move that we approve those abuse investigators as listed.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Cook. Any other questions before we vote? All those in favor of the child abuse investigators remaining the same and as listed on our agenda indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have affirmative action investigator, which is our guidance counselor, Mr. Jim Hansen. Any questions, changes?
I move that Jim Hansen be our affirmative action investigator.
Second.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Coons. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of our guidance counselor being our affirmative action investigator, who is Jim Hansen, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Then we have the hazardous chemical right to know, which is our environmental coordinator. We actually have two of them. We have a secondary science teacher, which is Josh Martinson. And we also have head of building and grounds, which is Mr. Brad Hofflin. Any questions regarding these positions or any suggestions?
I make a motion if these two gentlemen are willing, we leave it as is.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Coons, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any questions, suggestions? If not, all those in favor of appointing the chemical right to know coordinators as Josh Martinson and Brad Hofflin indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Then we have our EOE coordinator, which has been our middle school, high school principal, and currently is Ms. Vasquez. Would you entertain keeping that position? Okay. Any discussion? Well,
No.
first one here that we can actually ask.
I bet you really had a choice.
No, really.
It's nice you made it sound that way, though, Gary.
Yes. We got to let them in lightly in here. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Is there a second?
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Coons. Any discussion? All those in favor of our middle school, high school principal, Ms. Vasquez, being our EOE coordinator, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to informational. Who's doing the TSP? Okay. We're going to go with Mr. Kramer on our TSP proposal. He'll explain what TSP is and what this is about.
If you remember in June, at our June meeting, TSP came and presented us with a presentation about their company and some of the other examples of other districts within the area that they've worked with. The idea for West Sioux would be to develop a long-term facilities plan that would help us consider updates for the educational contributions in the district, ranging from facilities, heating and cooling. They would take a closer look at our enrollment pieces that are upcoming. They'd also develop a steering committee with stakeholder groups that would be included in employees, community members, board members, and get representation to really find out for the long-term pieces what we want to take a look at in regards to what would be the physical plant and things that we could make improvements, or if we're exceeding now standards in the area and in the state with that. The idea is I kind of progress with financial, with staff, and all the things. We want to develop that long-term plan to be something we can use as a blueprint as we kind of proceed forward. I had no really idea what to expect on a cost. I know in the past we've worked with FEH, and costs have increased quite dramatically since we worked with FEH in regards to a program like this. So the cost for that proposal will be $24,640. This would help during the master planning process that they described in our letter and proposal. this is an informational item, so this would be an item in which any board members would have questions or an interest in taking action at next month's board meeting. I'd be certainly interested to hear board members' feedback.
Okay. We can also, there is time for discussion on this and any questions we have,
Yes, definitely.
so go ahead. Do you think, I guess I have a question, being that the cost is significantly higher than what I was expecting maybe, do you think it would, there's other groups, isn't there?
I would definitely be interested in taking a look at just seeing what other options might be out there to assist us in this same type of planning. I would be interested just to see the cost comparison because obviously varied companies might be varied cost, but I'd be curious to see if some of them are very similar or dramatically different. Mr. Cook?
No, I just think it's a good idea if we can get the cost where it should, maybe
Yeah.
should be, I don't know.
Kind of like in a bidding process almost to kind of determine that.
Well, it could be that, I'm sure they follow some type of guidelines within the business of themselves, so I'm sure they're probably all higher, but you never know.
Probably, but to me, there's a
Due
need to
diligence.
do that.
Yeah.
So we can look down the line, maybe 5 or 10 years.
I agree.
If I
Larry.
understood it right, the June meeting, these folks kind of work basically with schools, right? I mean, this is their.
That's correct, yes, primary responsibility, yep.
And we've never worked with them before, right?
We had not in the past, no.
So would the TSB be the engineers of the project also?
Yes, as I understood it, they would be the same types of services that formerly FEH had kind of performed for us in the past.
Not to throw black eyes out or to make black eyes, but I wasn't, my confidence in FEH sometimes was struggling. So I would probably really like to talk with other people. I mean, TSP would be, you know, that part of the ball game is everything to a project.
They seem to focus a lot more on the planning component of it and long-range planning, where I believe, and this is just out of not really knowing for sure, and the exploration, it might be different, but some of the others seem to focus more on the engineering, architecture type pieces, not necessarily long-term. So it might be kind of what we're looking for, and maybe the others will say, we don't specialize in this type of thing if that's what you're looking for, or they may say, absolutely, we can do that with the best of them. So I definitely think exploring those other options is certainly, we're not in a significant rush to have that. One more month will not make a dramatic difference for us in the planning process. Okay. All right, we'll work on that continuously then for the next month.
Okay. Then also on B of the informational items, none of the informational items have any action to them. So we have a 28E agreement between the school and the city of Ireton in concerns to the Ireton softball field, which we'll hear more about later this evening, and we've actually heard in previous meetings. Can you explain the
Yes,
28E?
2080 agreement is a state outline really for an agreement between the schools and any other school agency or any other government agency. Currently, we do not have any agreement in place with the city of Ireton for the use of the softball facility there. I think it would be beneficial to both parties to kind of just get an outline of what time period we'd be looking for. If I don't think at any time do either parties have any plans in the future to not continue to have West Sioux play in the Ireton facility, but I think it would be beneficial to look at, and irregardless of who would change on the board, who would change in administration, who would change in the city council, to have a guide there What might be included in this are who the responsible parties are for electrical, upkeep of the field. In an initial discussion, currently we've shared the cost of different items with the city. For instance, temporary fencing that was there, and then now within the last year, permanent fencing in the outfield. We've shared those costs with the city of Ironton. What this agreement might look like is one which would have a time period or a time delay if any party wanted to remove themselves from the agreement, and then also something that I'd like for us to kind of support in the future would be the aeration of the outfield and fertilization of the outfield. So those things would be written out within that agreement. What we'd like to see, Mel Suisa, who is a city councilman from the city of Ironton, wanted to have 2 city council representatives and 2 board members meet together along with myself and just kind of draw out something that would be agreeable to both groups that we could bring in front of both the city council and the school board for approval in our in our October meetings. So I'd be willing to take the names of 2 volunteers that would be interested in being part of that committee for the 2080 agreement.
I would be interested in serving on that, or participating in that.
I would also.
Okay. All right. Is that all right with everybody?
I am from Ironton, so I'll just-
Sounds good, gentlemen. Thank you.
I'll know anyways, so. Right, Craig?
Okay, thank you. Now moving on to C, which would be the lane advancements contracts. We have copies of those in front of us. Mr. Kramer, would you like to go through them?
Number of contracts there, I won't read those out, but we have a number of teachers moving up on the salary schedule because of education fulfillments. From the financial standpoint, of course, it's one of those that makes it a little bit more difficult, but from the perspective of the report cards that are specifically towards schools and the education level of our teachers, this is something encouraging and shows us that we have a staff that is really motivated by going out, getting a higher education level, and then of course being rewarded then on the salary schedule. So I'm encouraged by the number of teachers that we have working towards that.
Okay. Can you explain to us, because I did have a question about that from the community person, we do not have to vote on those?
Correct. Because it is part of master contract and you've actually already approved their employment, it is part of information because irregardless of approval during this time period, we would, because of master contract, have to advance them along that salary schedule.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Then we have the first reading of policy 905.2. That is also Mr. Kramer's.
This would include just the addition of the e-cigarettes. So approved for tobacco cessation is the change in wording there, rather than specifically describing tobacco-related products. So it kind of allows us to reinforce those rules within campus if we happen to have e-cigarettes.
Okay, that's the first reading. So we'll have one more reading next week before, or excuse me, next meeting before we approve it and add it to our policy. We have wrestling room expansion. Mr. Van Ord is here to represent us.
I think everybody had a packet, but we have an updated packet for you.
We've been given the updated
I
package.
printed one out for them and they got it, yep.
Well, I guess secondly, it's a good time to tell you that the JV football team's tied 7-7 right now in Omar's, so that's positive.
Mark, do you want to grab that mic a little bit higher for you? I think.
Better?
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
First thing, thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak to you on behalf of our wrestling program. Thank you for the opportunity to work with the wrestling program. Secondly, as we go down this path for the initiative to renovate the wrestling room, I want you to understand that we're very grateful for the room that we do have, and I do feel that it's a first-class facility, but unfortunately at this point I feel like we've outgrown it. On this first page, I'm just going to kind of read to you word for word for the sake of the audience. Our objective of this meeting tonight is to expand the wrestling room, provide a safe environment that is conducive to the athlete and the team development in the sport of wrestling. Our key concerns with this initiative: athlete injuries and safety. Providing a safe training environment is at the forefront of our initiative. Concussions are a major concern in sports today, and we feel it is in our best interest to make sure facilities are adequate in prevention of all injuries. Also, the junior high does not currently have adequate facilities, and that they're practicing in the commons on a 40 by 40 mat. This creates new safety issues that I think we need to start looking at a long-term plan for. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're always providing an environment that's proper for training. Providing adequate space for training is also important. If the wrestlers train in an undersized area, they have a tendency to compromise proper technique. This also creates where that injury might happen if they don't compromise that technique, that they might land on somebody. When training is compromised, this certainly shows up in competition. We also want to maximize the opportunity for every student that participates in our program. High school athletic programs are designed to provide opportunity for students and development of teams. Providing this opportunity in a safe and proper training manner may result in scholarships, leadership qualities, and positive school recognition. Our current problem, the West Sioux Wrestling Room, is currently undersized due to growing involvement. This creates unnecessary safety and training challenges. Our athletes currently have 51 square feet of training space per student. Optimal conditions for a high school program would be approximately 100 square feet per kid. I'm not going to go through every school here, but the first Excel sheet here is our participation level. We polled 26 schools. We would be the 26th one, and 2 colleges. West Sioux, in terms of all those schools, is expected to have the 3rd highest participation level in the sport of wrestling next season. These numbers were, I pulled some of them from track wrestling, and I had feedback from some other area coaches as well. Track wrestling is a data logging system for our sport. It's kind of like quick stats in the rest of the sports.
Track wrestling is mandated by the state, so everybody has to use it. That's why it's a good data source.
Yeah, any kid that is body composition tested is logged in there. And we can see if they were active participants within their program or if they were not. The second sheet is square feet of wrestling space per kid. Currently, with the anticipated numbers for the upcoming season, which we anticipate having 38 based on the 28 kids that finished last season, and a very large freshman class coming in. This number could actually grow beyond that, but we also know that it could be less than that. Until they step foot in the room that day, we know that this is still an assumption. But at 51 square feet, we're about 12 feet per kid less than Alta Aurelia, who is currently also lobbying for a new wrestling room. Some of our conference school affiliates, I know Hinton is getting a new room in December. I know Akron Westfield had a room on the bond issue that didn't pass for them. And Central Line, who's not in our conference, just recently had a new wrestling room as well, as did Rock Valley Boyd and Hull. The next page is our physical room size. So we have the 3rd highest participation level, the least amount of wrestling space, and then the 6th smallest physical size room at 1,920 square feet. And moving on to the next page, this just provides you with a breakdown of the schools that were polled. As you can see, we polled 18 1A schools, 6 2A schools, and 2 3A schools. For the sake of this, I wanted to try to provide an honest understanding of what schools our size are doing, but also give an illustration of what's out there. And I thought this did a pretty nice job. Northwestern College and Buena Vista College, both recently in the last 10 years or so, Buena Vista 10 years ago, Northwestern College in the last year, have built new rooms. Typical college program is about 40 athletes, similar to ours. And you can see that they're getting somewhere up around 200 square feet. Obviously, they're dealing with some bigger people in the room at times. The roster outlook, this goes back to our first grade class this season and through our senior class this year. These numbers are pulled from the registrants that we've had in the youth program. Some of them have been involved for several years. So we do have with confidence the belief that they will be involved in our program moving forward. This roster outlook supports the next page, which is the 9-year outlook. Again, we know that these numbers are estimated. They could change with time. They could grow larger, they could grow smaller. You can see that 5 years from now, we estimate that we are going to have 27 athletes involved in our sport. But shortly after that, we get back to 32, 34, 40, and 39. The program has been growing at very high levels for the last 3 or 4 years, something that we're very excited about. We think it's awesome anytime we can provide an opportunity inside of our community for our students. The youth program currently has 76 kids that participate in it. Another good indicator that this problem isn't something that's going to go away. Those 76 kids equate that we're going to have 9.5 students per class potentially participating once they get to that high school level. So we will continue to be around that 40 student average. Touching back on the junior high dilemma that we may have and looking at a long-term solution there, I think it's important to note that our junior high coaches do a fantastic job of getting our kids involved in that during that junior high season when they can participate in wrestling and basketball. They truly have the opportunity to experience and make a decision after that experience. That being said, historically we've seen about 85% of the boys in those junior high classes participate in the sport of wrestling and basketball. So that certainly compounds that problem, and it's something that we believe is going to continue to be a challenge for us with the junior high program. The reason that we bring up the junior high situation is that we do feel that in the long term we need to be identifying what we can do for today's challenge with the growing numbers in the high school, but also what can we do in the future to potentially provide our students with wrestling rooms that meet both needs. So we really have brought two different options to discuss here for the board tonight. Wrestling room expansion number one. This entails knocking down the entire wall in between the wrestling room and the storage room. That would come at a cost of an estimated price of $39,250. Proposal number two is demoing a 15-foot hole, approximately 15-foot hole, into the wall to provide that room as access and still give the coaching staff the ability to monitor and supervise the students that are in there. This comes at a price of $17,550 estimated. And with either option, we know that we have a storage issue. We will need to figure out where to relocate the sports equipment that is currently stored in that storage room. We've been through the school. We believe that we have some options that will work. I'm sure that Mr. Boza can put his input on that, but we estimate that this is probably going to run about $7,000 in addition to either option, because we have to go somewhere with that. The final page is an example of what the wrestling room would look like if the wall is completely removed, giving us a 40 by 70, 2,800 square foot room. And then the last page is contact information for myself And also Mark Renz, who's our head youth coach and also a contractor. That being said, we are certainly open to answering any questions that you may have. I know it's a lot of numbers to swallow.
So do any of these proposals address the middle school problem?
Not in the short term.
Do you have any ideas for that in the short term, or continue as we're going?
How short-term?
Well, the next 2 or 3 years.
I think ideally, we would like to find a space that we could move our junior high program into that would include wall mats to prevent injuries, concussions, things like that. If you're not familiar with what our junior high currently does, they roll a mat out in our either our high school or our middle school commons. And typically, when they're wrestling, they'll get into groups of 3, and 2 kids will be wrestling, and 1 will be in charge of making sure nobody's head bounces off the floor. So,
And have you identified a possible space?
I wouldn't want to speculate. One of the possible spaces that we've talked about in just discussions between Ryan and I is we have a need for an updated auditorium. Updating our current auditorium is probably not feasible based on the space that's there and the condition that it's in. If we were to update, or excuse me, put a different auditorium in somewhere on our grounds, that's a possible multi-purpose room that could be used throughout the year. Otherwise, we don't have a lot of options. Unless you want, I mean, we could build another gym or,
So what you're referring to is our possible long-range plan?
right, the TSP plan that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Again, that's all just speculation at this point. I mean, we don't know what's going to be on that plan. We don't know where that idea ranks among the necessities of our district. But it is an idea.
What kind of timetable are you looking at for this?
Yesterday. Obviously, the sooner the better based on the expected numbers for this season. We started last year with 31 students, ended with 28. It was plenty tight inside of the room, and thinking that we're going to cram 38 in there, I'm a little bit reluctant to think that it's going to be the best situation.
Is it realistic to think that you could have some of this work done and ready to go by the time your season starts?
Yeah, I do believe so.
On your, either plan has electrical needs.
On the,
What are those for?
So on the initial estimate that was put together, when we were knocking out the entire wall, there is conduit, there's a TV that's mounted, all of that would have had to be relocated. On the proposal number 2, there is no electrical needs. We've moved that, the 15-foot section, into an area where it's strictly knocking out block wall.
With that 15-foot removal of that, is that going to require an engineer?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Renz or Mr. Kramer.
I would say, for sure, with occupancy, and the fire marshal really should look at it and everything.
Is that a load-bearing wall?
No, it's not.
It's not? Oh.
Well, excuse me, on the one side it is, a beam, you know, things like that are done all the time, but with occupancy and everything, I would rather have it engineered also, which I think you'd have to have it done. You guys agree with that, Mr. Kramer?
Yes, I do agree. Yep.
As well.
you know, changing that room layout, making sure the fire marshal's good with everything.
Would we need to bid out this work? Do you have some volunteer in-kind
I think
options?
at this point, for the informational piece of this, I think we can identify some type of volunteer assistance if necessary. I would have to defer on the bid process to Mr. Kramer and Mr. Boza.
We would in fact have to bid it out, yes.
Would you move that bump in?
So on proposal number 1,
Yeah.
we do remove the bump because it adds considerable amount of space because they're always wrestling around the corners. So you really have 3 corners that they're wrestling in there. You have 2 inside corners and 1 outside corner, and that creates challenges. But in proposal number 2, we just leave that alone for the time being.
So what does that change in square foot per approximate? The 2 versus 1? Does it still fit your needs? Let's just ask that question.
Yeah, we're still getting pretty close to that 2,800 square foot. With the wall there, you lose a little bit, but it's not significant enough that that's going to be a huge problem. Certainly, the bigger piece of that is making sure that we have proper supervision on the back side
other
of the wall
side.
where we can't see the students. And that would be a coaching point of emphasis when I have my annual coaching meeting.
And Mr. Kramer, would this be a PEPAL project?
That is correct. When I get down to my report later, all the items that were just proposals for tonight to give us an idea of what even it would look like if we were to approve every one, it is listed in there. And so, yes, it would be a PEPAL silo expenditure.
And would fit in to our budget?
That is correct. We would be actually increasing our, if we were to approve all 3 projects plus all projects proposed for the fiscal year 2017, we would increase our carryover by approximately $380,000 from what we were proposed for this year carryover.
Well, this is a good problem to have because it's because of the participation that we've gotten through the hard work of our coaches and volunteers and parents. And I've been very impressed with the wrestling program all the way from the high school down to the kids program. And so if we can make it work, I would like to support it as much as I can.
We appreciate that and your good sentiments. We've all worked very hard to try to build this into a great opportunity for our students.
A couple questions I have about the financial amounts that you have for the bids. Are they, so when we talk about bids and so forth, these are as close humanly possible estimates? Is that what, because these are not bids. I imagine Mark and Craig probably had most to do with it.
They're budgeted amounts, you know, there's gonna be factors of what the engineer comes up with.
Okay.
When he goes and looks at everything, what's underneath the existing slab, if we gotta bust some concrete out and put some thicker footings, things like that. But I would like to say that they would be on the high end, obviously, you know. Hopefully he comes in and says that we have everything covered for, I feel that, you know, having the money in there for footings underneath where the poles are gonna go, if we did the whole wall, the amount of electric that we had figured in, I feel that everything should be ample. You know, the few variables would be if the fire marshal said he wanted another door, you know, there's a few little things like that that I'd like to get, you know, get it all straightened around.
I realize that your initial was take the whole wall out, and then there was somebody instituted of option 2. I'm sure you probably would like to go with option 1. That would be your ultimate, right? correct?
I think our preference would certainly be to go with option number one. I think option number two stems around the concept of maybe in the future, having that second space through the multipurpose room that could be utilized for 2 months or 3-4 months out of the year. And then we'd have the actual wrestling room as well.
Anybody have any other questions? You're,
I just got a comment, Mark. I think, I'm kind of with Larry, but reality is, what options are you gonna do? I hope you can make things, because my point here is, okay, by the time we get an engineer's plan of this, and then we okay that, and then, okay, and tell them, okay, we need bids, because obviously we gotta have bids. It's, I'm afraid to say it's not gonna be done by the time wrestling season starts, so
Well-
I'm just throwing this out here. You're gonna have to be kind
I
of,
think what they're really looking for is to have everything complete and be a package thing that we can vote on next meeting. And I think you probably, guys, are ready to act the next day, correct?
I think that'd be accurate.
I think that's the plan.
Yeah, I do agree with what Russ had said, if it has to go, what it needs to do, the architect, the engineer, and it gets bid out, on whoever did it, it would be tough to, time is of the
and I think your
essence.
biggest sticking point is getting approval from the fire marshal.
You know.
That's gonna be your biggest hangup, I think.
How long does it take to get them approvals?
It
That's a
varies.
open-ended question.
Varies, exactly.
Some things have never been approved.
Varies dramatically.
The idea of waiting, and by all means, we don't want to rush you guys into a decision either, but time is of the essence. To hook, roughly the starting date for the year is November 15, right, give or take.
For the construction component of this, option 2 or option 1, I mean, you have more, the reason I asked you this question, you have more knowledge than me, but I realize it's also not a question I would expect, oh, somebody told me it would only take 2 weeks. What does a project like, something similar like this from the point of demolition to completion? I mean, even.
We talked about this too, you take the beam out, you figure to take the beam out and put it back, that is a hurry up and go process. You figure 2 to 3 days for the beam, to get everything moved out of that room, get the beam in. Overall, a week would be pushing it, 2 weeks would be done, for sure. And I'm talking all the storage room areas put back together, the floor down, the wall mats, everything on. And that's talking on a 4 to 5 person every day.
Thanks for giving me that estimate, because I would have no clue.
Yeah, you'd want to make it as least, you'd want to just get it done.
If I could suggest, immediately, I think there's enough interest in the board to further this on, and do the homework it takes and get it ready for the next meeting. I would say, talk to your fire marshal as quick as you can, and everybody else that have input into it, and then have it put together. And I mean, if this was an action item, if this was on the agenda for action, I feel that some of these figures are probably too vague and we don't really know exactly where we're at. Not meaning that you don't, but
No,
for what we would like to see, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I definitively think we'd want the hard numbers in the bids and those types of things, but I can get other questions answered and those types of things. And
When you see that, would you like to see backups for like what the beam costs, things like that? More of a breakdown of everything you're saying? Or-
Nothing different than you would do in any other bid project.
Okay,
Nothing I mean, other than Ken, meaning is a breakdown of what you're going to do and the inputs into it, yes. But I meant, you know, we just want to know what the project will cost, so we don't go over it, so we can just know what we're voting on.
Yep.
That it, you know, or to, you know, how we do it. I know that's what it's going to take for me to make a vote.
The question that I would have, I would assume that there's some cost involved in getting a drawing done by an architect and an engineer. So should we go ahead and get those done? Are we committed to having those expenditures?
Well,
Or are we still?
I think the architect and engineering will probably be one price. That's what I would
That's what
imagine.
yeah, that's what I mean.
What would you estimate, Mark, that somebody would like to, I mean,
Our engineer that we have do like all of our steel buildings and stuff like that, he usually bills us anywhere from $350 to $400 per building. And you know, that total project is about, you know, they range anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000. So to be safe, I would say, like for instance, on the poles up at the ball field, you know, he just engineered them pro bono. You know, I could ask him if he would do the same here, but he might. But I'd be amazed if it was over $500.
would that be in, being that it's a building and building codes and fire thing, do you think that would be the same as an outside project?
With the occupancy, with him just doing the engineering part, I think that I was thinking if it was an occupancy, it'd probably be a $200 to $300. But, you know, with it being occupancy and everything, we'd still need the fire marshal, you know, we'd still need those things, but the structural part of it.
I think move forward.
What's your thoughts, Ken, on
I'm
moving
just
forward?
listening tonight. I'm gathering information.
The reason why that I'm asking you that is what they're asking is that an expense that we incur before we vote?
It would not have to take action. I just need consensus that
Yeah.
that would be something.
Right, that's why I'm asking.
Right.
If we should probably be able to get a close estimate from the architectural or whatever, and the other engineer before we even decide to go for it.
Right.
And then you'd have to put some parameters on where, you know, at what level do you want to go ahead. But do you charge for your estimates?
No.
No. Okay, so,
But you have an estimate in front of you. What we're asking for is something more detailed that involves drawings and the professional
Yeah.
opinion of an architect and an engineer.
I guess what I'm trying to
Put
do
their
is,
stamp on it.
I'm trying to get feelings from the individual board members on a consensus, because what's being asked is can they get, if there's a cost of $200 to $300, to have an architect come in and so they can actually get a better idea on a bid. That's what the
I'd go for that. All right.
Russ?
Yeah, I'm
This is a
okay with that.
consensus.
No, I'm okay with that.
I mean, just to draw up a more concise,
Well, because it's gonna have
That's
to go
a-
out, it's gonna have to go out for bids anyways. I mean, we're gonna need at least at minimum 2 bids, so.
Correct.
You need an engineered drawing to send out to the contractor, so they're all bidding the same thing, so I think that's what we need to do is
So
get it drawn up.
are we gonna have an engineer's drawing and then an architectural concept? Or just
I
an
don't think so.
engineer's drawing? Engineer's
I
drawing.
don't think we have to architect the,
I don't know that you need an architect so much involved, just an engineer, structural engineer,
Okay,
unless,
That's correct.
okay.
That would be the same
The
thing I would
wall's
say.
getting covered up with padding anyways.
right, there's not a lot of architecture, if that's what you're asking, Ken.
that's what I'm asking.
And for that, do we need to know which proposal we're looking at, or would we do two proposals?
Yeah, as you say, you could do both and determine from there.
Go ahead, Ken.
I think one engineering deal would be enough, and it doesn't matter what it's on.
Well, it might be different because the structural I-beam will be bigger if it's a bigger spans, I imagine, correct?
Right.
And the footings will have to be different and everything.
I would like to, the engineering cost isn't gonna be the same, or it's gonna be a little more, but it's not gonna be.
We need them for both, so we can,
Right.
we need to cover both, so we can actually know what we're doing. So, I think it's I think the board's okay with that, going ahead and getting the engineer thing done, so you can get your bids put out. I don't see how we could do it any different and meet any type of time frame.
Yep.
Okay. And if we have more questions, the contact information, or talk to Ben and he can get a hold of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever you guys would like to do.
It's about all we can do for you tonight.
That's all right. We
Thank you,
appreciate
gentlemen.
you listening to us.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, and thanks for
you.
coming in.
Thank you.
Is she next?
She's on the report under C. Could move it up if you'd like.
It's just a report, right?
It's just a report.
There is some risk in living.
Okay, we have
in
bond
Canton,
refinance and
Wisconsin,
shared.
and everybody wants to take the risk.
We
on
should
living.
get her up here because that board member. Well, Ben, go ahead.
Jan, would you be willing to do your report at this time? Thanks, Jan.
We're gonna move up Jan Thompson's, the TLC.
It's also spotlight and report for board members. It's item C. And 6A also.
These two items that, there was one in the board packet too. Yes.
No, it was a great idea.
Just to give you a little bit of background, I put the spreadsheet in the board packet that deals with the trainings that we've done since the beginning of August. And for the first semester, the instructional coaches are only involved in one training that takes them out of the district, and that's a Sept training that's happening on the 20th of September. Otherwise, all of their trainings will be in-house. And I will be going to trainings and then bringing it back to them. But basically, geez, my eyes are getting older than my body. That's why I have this. I can't see up there. Basically, what I've been working on for the last couple of weeks is developing a website that is informative and somewhat similar to what's been up there, but I changed it a little bit. Mrs. Vasquez and I worked on the goals to make them a little bit user-friendly, not necessarily just so educational people can understand them. But I've done work on the one that TNS Consultants did, yeah, that Tina and Susie did for us, and basically changed it so it's not so wordy. And basically, these are the goals that everybody should be able to read and understand. And then I've changed a few things on the website to make it a little bit more understandable. You can get to this website by going to westwoodschools.org, and it's the left-hand side. The navigation site's on the left-hand side. It is not on the top of the website anymore. That one I was basically just one page. This is covers several pages. So it's along the left-hand side, right-hand side of the web page under the TLC. And so if you just click on that, you take it right to our goals, and they are tied into the district goals that we have. As you move down the website, I'm not going to go through every single part of every page unless you have questions on them. So when we worked on these goals, we just basically said the same things in just easier language to understand. Okay, so as you go along the left-hand side, it takes you down through did I have to read this? The philosophy behind TLC still includes the legislature that's behind it, and House File 215, and that is 71 pages. The TLC part of that House file starts at 61. So if you want to look through the last 10 pages, that pretty much tells you about the TLC the state's reasons for TLC and the law behind it. If you go ahead and look at the very top of it, that's the basic reason behind TLC, and it's to improve student learning. If you're going to do that, you have to improve the instruction that they receive on a day-to-day basis. And then there is no better way to do this than to empower your teachers to improve the instruction in the classroom. If you go down to the TLC staff along the left-hand side, that includes the instructional coaches and the mentors. And mentors do not have their own website, but the instructional coaches do. And they developed that in the first 3 days at school, just so that they could get an idea out there. That is the biggest question that I've run into, is what exactly is an instructional coach, and what do they do? And so Tom and Mary and Teresa came up with an instructional coach website. And then on there, they talk about availability, they talk about what they will do, and they put it in a cafe theme. So they've seen that in other schools, and so it's just a way of getting their information out there. And so I linked it to this main page. I think they did a pretty good job of coming up with all of the things that they are willing to do for the teachers. And as of last week, Friday, we have had 43 contacts with teachers since the beginning of the school year. And instructional coaching is a voluntary thing for our teachers. They don't get told they have to meet with an instructional coach. It's all voluntary, and so we've had 43 different contacts with instructional coaches since the beginning, which blew our expectations out of the water. We expected 10 from what other schools told us.
So
And we have 43.
what involves, what would that be an example of what they would discuss?
It is a request by the teachers to help them, for basically our purposes at the beginning of the year, is restructure a classroom, or how they're going to set up their instruction in their classroom compared to what they've done in the past.
Okay.
And so one of our instructional coaches was asked to help one of the teachers to set up a new class because that's the first time they've ever taught it. And so they contacted the instructional coach that would have the most skills to offer the instruction, that teacher. Elementary, it's been everything from Daily 5 to GLAD to a lot of their initiatives that they have down there. Yeah. And so, really 43 contexts was, they're so busy that they don't have any downtime. And that was one of their fears, is that they weren't going to have teachers ask them to help them instructionally, and that's not happened.
Do the instructional coaches have specialties that they work in as far as curricular areas, technology,
Yep.
or?
Tammy, if you go back to that, go to the top and go to availability. In their availability, it's TLC staff. And then on the top of the instructional coach page.
Bird scared me.
There's availability. That talks about when each of the coaches is available to do their coaching. It talks about their, I can't see, I don't have it on here. What their interests are. So their interests can be anything. Tom Dorhout is the instructional coach that is like our APL guru. He knows so much about APL, and that's what he's been contacted for, is APL strategies and classroom management. A lot of technology for him. And Mary is very good at instructional strategies. I think she's got more instructional strategies in her mind than most people have. So there are 2 instructional coaches who don't have the availability yet, because they are specialists in the elementary, and we don't have their schedule yet. So, okay, so then that will get updated on the site, and their coaching interests. But each of the coaches is trained in the same coaching style, which right now is a gym night model of coaching, which comes from the Kansas Coaching Project in Kansas. His model is pretty good, but we're also doing book studies on all the different kinds, so we can find what fits us the best.
Do all the instructional coaches work in all of the grade levels, or?
Yes, all of them are willing to go to all the different buildings, and in fact, some of them really would like the opportunity to go to different buildings.
And so teachers in the buildings request a service from the instructional coach?
Or they request when they talk to me, and I can recommend them to a certain coach to them, or we can look at the website and they can see which strategies they're interested in using for that particular need. So.
And did I understand that regular teachers in the classroom may or may not participate in the TLC program as far as getting help and instruction
Yep.
from our instructional coaches?
They're not required to. We're not given lists of teachers' names who have not participated in this and are told that we have to go seek them out. But the coaches do send out emails asking for people, if they are interested, to contact them. And there hasn't been anybody that hasn't shown some interest at some point that I've talked to. So some of the ones that have been there for the longest are the ones that would surprise you the most at how much they want to improve their instruction.
My concern would be if there's a teacher or two that decides they don't want to take advantage of the TLC
That's
program.
not our job to do anything with them. That's administration's job to deal with that.
Are there trainings that the TLC will be doing for the whole staff?
Yes.
Okay. So
The
in that way,
AIW
everyone
trainings will be
get
done by our instructional coaches and our mentors. And there's only 2 trainings that we can't do in-house, and one is APL, and the other one is SIP, the Classroom Implementation Profile, walkthroughs that we do. We can't train on site. They have to be certified through that. The mentors have a big job this year because we hired 11 new teachers. So the mentors are also, you know, mentoring 2 and 3 people at the same time, which gets to be a little difficult because they're 100% in the classroom. Finding the time to be a one-on-one mentor to a new teacher is we're finding it difficult, but instructional coaches can cover for them. I can cover for them, so they can get the time to do that.
And do we mentor for just 1 year, or is it 2-year?
It's required by the state to mentor for 2 years. But we also mentor the teachers that are new to the district, and any third-year teacher that feels like they need to be mentored more, but they don't have the requirements that the first and second-year teachers do. But our mentoring program is in-house. We don't go to the AEA mentoring days anymore, so that cuts down on a lot of, because that would be at least 20 people, minimum of 20, because of the numbers. 4 times a year, yeah. So as my job as a TLC lead, I'm also an instructional coach and a mentor at the same time. I haven't really found the time to be a mentor at the same time, but I am coaching one person that's new to the district, and so we'll see how that goes with being in all 3 buildings. So.
I've been very pleased thus far. You know, you go into a program like that and you wonder, you're hopeful, and we're pretty familiar with our staff, and I was quite confident that we take advantage of other teachers utilizing innovative programs, utilizing teachers in their classroom to get that feedback, but you still always, until you implement it, you don't know quite for sure. And having 43 requests is really uplifting, and kind of says what that group did and the school did in designing that program. So very pleased. And as Jan kind of proceeds with her goals and things, one of our big aspects of this year will be measurable goals that we'll kind of be able to keep in front of you guys, so we can monitor very specifically what kind of things we want to see from the program, the implementation, and what we can do. But they've done an awesome job thus far.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, excuse me. With that, we'll go back into the informational, and we'll move on to bond refinancing with Mr. Kramer.
Piper Jaffray let Jake and I know that right now interest rates are at a point in which it's advantageous for us to take a look at refinancing what would be our bond against our 1-cent sales tax dollars. When we did the improvements for the Industrial Technology Edition and the Science Lab, we bonded against our future 1-cent sales tax. That interest rate now has declined, that it would be a significant savings if we were to take a closer look at refinancing that bond. And I wanted to bring it up for information to kind of go do some more research and possibly have Piper Jaffray come and visit with us at our next board meeting to possibly lock in a refinance of the bond if it would be as significant of a money savings as they're kind of projecting within your packet.
Is there any downside to refinancing?
Not that I'm aware of. I think we always have a risk there of, within if we would have waited another month, or if we would have done it a month before, we could have gotten this savings. But I definitely think and been very pleased with their advice that they've given us, that I think being able and willing to pull the trigger next month if it was where it is now would be a benefit to us. So I'll have them take a closer look at that for next month and keep you guys informed.
Do you have that in there, Ken? Is that in your packet, Ken?
Yeah, I read that. Just, you gotta decide whether the interest rate's gonna go up or down. So it's gonna be a crapshoot, no matter what you do. Because how often can you rebond?
I don't know for sure, honestly.
I don't either.
Yeah. That would be a question I can ask them and have it part of a report if you'd like. Because I'd be very interested in having that information myself.
As long as you pay the fees, you can do it as many times as you want.
Savings goes down with that.
Yeah, if you aren't gonna save anything.
Okay, any other questions concerning this bond refinancing? If not, we'll move on to the shared librarian. This also is a non-action item.
This is an agreement that has been in place with the Akron Westfield School District in the past. We contracted with Mr. Peters to serve as our certified librarian and the Akron Westfield certified librarian. Now that we employ a half-time librarian at West Sioux that is there, we are still going to, or Akron requested that we continue our sharing agreement with them. There would be no financial incentive to the individual performing this, but there would be a financial incentive to the district of $500.
Any questions concerning this? Okay. Moving on to the 71st Annual IASB Convention. Tammy?
That is the annual convention every year that's in Des Moines. I'm guessing you've probably all gotten mail on the subject. I have not made any reservations or anything yet, so if anybody's interested in going, let me know and I'll make them all at once, get everybody registered, and get the rooms. The convention is at the Iowa Convention Center, I believe it's called, downtown Des Moines.
Old Vets Auditorium.
Oh, yeah. So if anybody's interested in going, I believe that Brian and I are going for sure, Larry. But if anybody else wants to go, let me know and I'll get you registered and get you set up.
What's the date?
The
16, 17, 18.
Yep. 17th and 18th of November.
17, 18 in November.
It's last year was the first year I went. It's very informative. It's a neat thing. I encourage everyone to go.
Tammy, I won't need a room, though.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Moving on to early retirement policy. We have the first reading.
As part of our process, each September, we reapprove the retirement policy that's in place with the updated information from negotiations. So that has been updated, and this would require 2 readings, and this is the first of 2 readings.
We will discuss this again next month. Is there any questions, Ken?
No, I have none.
Okay.
We're just bound by the master contract to do that, so there we are, if we're not gonna sunset it. You know, if you
The early retirement is not in the master contract.
Actually, we can
It's just
pull
in
the
the board
retirement,
policy.
yeah.
it's not in there, but at least the number that goes in there is.
The number,
Yeah, okay.
well,
That can,
it's not.
We can
it's
change
not
that.
tied, we have tied it ourselves
Yeah.
to that number.
We change it
But the
according.
master contract doesn't
Say
dictate
that,
that
okay.
number is.
But that's the number that we, okay. There's nobody wants to sunset that, do they? Okay, so I'm just getting a consensus.
Thanks, Mr. Cook.
I think it's been good for both parties.
There have been advantages to it, yes.
Yeah, well, I'm agreeing with that. I'm not trying to get it sunset.
Well, I think all of us have had questions from maybe some forward planning of some teachers about this. And it is good for both parties, you know, financially for us and a decision for them on their retirement.
Does the 6, whatever it is, 75 or whatever, does that cover single person coverage totally?
I believe that's correct of what it covers, yes.
It does, okay, thank you.
There are some things, you know, eventually we may, you know, depending on the portion of this policy does allow us to kind of utilize it for financial planning if we were looking at budgetary amounts and things. I know other districts, neighboring districts have changed their system quite dramatically to either entice more retirees or at certain times to have a larger number. So things that, you know, we might, as I kind of look at our budget forecasting, you know, it's something that's always out there.
The early retirement stuff was substantially more 15 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I understand why it got sunset.
Yep.
Moving on, we have under J, a board member resignation.
Last Thursday, I received Danny Gradert's resignation from her board position effective immediately. I regretfully received that. I appreciate Danny's work on the board in the short time that I've been superintendent and the longer period of time in which I worked with her in different capacities from her parent role, which she currently will continue, to business manager and board secretary. So it's with great regret that I give this to you, but I wish her well in all their future endeavors and everything that she's done for West Sioux. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Witt to talk about what we do in replacement of that position.
Looking at the board policy manual, there is 2 things that are noted in there. One is board appointment, which we have done before. That requires that we have that filled within 30 days of the resignation. That is done by either soliciting through advertising or just letting the public know. We have gone back before and we've even talked to past board members, come back in and come back and do another stint, which is to fill the balance of that position time, which I believe is 2 more years, if I'm right. Is that correct?
My understanding is there would be an election the next year.
The next available election, I believe.
Right, so it would just be for 1 year.
Okay.
And then
I
the
stand
election would
corrected.
be to fill the following year. And then they'd be up for election again.
They can choose to run.
Yes.
The appointee can. Correct. Okay. I stand corrected. Then also, if we don't have an appointee in that time period, I believe the wording says we have to have a election within 60 days and no later than 70 days. And we have to contact the county election. No, Ken?
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying is absolutely correct.
Oh, okay.
It just points to me that appointment is a better mode.
Well, we work hard at the
Yeah, I
appointment.
know, we'll find somebody.
It's
Well,
happened, I think, 3 times since I've been on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they have to be in the district that she represents, don't they?
Correct.
Correct.
Which is District 2?
I don't know I don't know. what the number-
That isn't an issue, but
It's up by the school, the high
Yeah,
school.
there you go.
4? Oh, okay. I thought that was mine. Anyway, So is there any other questions or comments?
Oh, hey. My email address, they're no longer in business. ACSnet is out of business. So you can take that off if you want to.
Okay.
And so do we need a consensus that we're going to go ahead and,
I don't know if it's a
For an appointment?
consensus. I think it's, well, yeah, I guess we can do
I
that.
was gonna say, on what avenue you guys want to
We
explore.
can have Tammy put an ad in the paper, I think is one of the things, perhaps on the website. Usually word gets out after a meeting also. So is it consensus of the board that we go ahead with an appointee process?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a yes.
and what is expected of someone who is interested in being appointed? Assuming there's going to be several people that are going to want to do that.
Assuming that,
That's assumption.
I guess, fulfill the duties of a board member. One of them is attend the meetings, become knowledgeable, be available.
Will there be an interview, or how will we make a decision on who
How-
to choose if there's multiple
We
candidates?
actually, they are present. We do have a chance to interview them the night of the meeting. Now, what I did the last time, when you came on, I met with them previous and asked them, the same questions that I wanted to know of their thoughts, what they bring to the table, any past experiences they had. According to the board policy, we also have to be careful so we do not basically run a campaign for anybody also. You know, we have to stay somewhat clairvoyant about all of them. But at the last one, when we did it, we had 3 different people, and all 3 of them had votes.
So,
2, 1, and 1, I think, or 2, 1, and 1, I believe.
someone who's interested in filling that position would be expected to come to a board meeting and talk about why they want to be a board member, and,
I think they should be willing to answer our questions, yes.
you know. So they should know that going in, that's a requirement, is that they will.
Do you believe that, Ken? No?
Yeah,
Oh.
but if we're going to do it in 30 days, we won't have another board meeting for that.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have a special board meeting.
Okay,
probably.
that sounds fine, but if we're into
Yeah, I
those
agree.
constraints,
I can only go by what I experienced, and I was asked, I thought about it. I told Danny, because Danny was the secretary at the time, this is, yep, I'll throw my name in the hat, and the board president contacted me. Came to the next scheduled board meeting, and can't remember if you guys asked me any questions or not. And they voted.
So, what we should do is tonight is to probably schedule a special meeting. Can we do that at the end of the meeting? Is that possible? Give us a chance, okay? More than likely, to fulfill the 30-day requirement from last Thursday to the new meeting would not fall within that 30-day period, so we'll have to have a special meeting, and that's what we're talking about. We'll come up with a date at the end before adjournment. Thank you. Any more questions concerning that? Okay, if not, we'll go to the consent agenda. This is action. In front of you, you have the August minutes. Everybody had a chance to go through that. We'll do what we've done in the last couple meetings. We'll read through them, and then we'll discuss each one, and then we'll pull out what we want to vote on, correct? Okay.
sounds good.
We also have the August invoices in front of us. Ken is our person that we depend on to go through them in more more detail. Is there anything that you had worked on or anything? Okay,
The only thing that I've seen is our bus report is inaccurate at times because of I don't know why it's inaccurate. It just isn't getting reported of the expenses for everything, the wreck, the bus problem, those things. So if you've looked through the bills, you'll see them in there, and they should be on the bus report. So
okay.
we need to get those moved to the bus report.
Mr. Kramer, I believe, is,
He's well aware.
Okay.
I have a conversation with him. Otherwise, everything seems to be going along fairly smoothly.
okay,
We did, the baseball project got the $8,000 that the district was to provide, according to what I saw there. So, we're on track.
okay. Thanks, Ken. So we have the Secretary's financial report from Mr. Kramer. I'm going to step out for a minute for a personal thing, and I'll be back. Go ahead.
No problem. Tammy, you want to bring that up? Or do you- Thanks.
Gonna take a nap. Getting too long.
It would be the financial one, the one with. Yes. Yep, that right there. Yes, thank you. As you can see, we did do a change there, or we're very similar to actually the 14-15 school year with our cash balance. As I get to the financial forecasting, this will be something that we'll kind of talk about more in detail. Jake and I talked about this. We're going to take a close look at the way we kind of show this. This works really well at the end of our fiscal year for some comparisons, but in about the first 3 or 4, it really just doesn't give us enough accurate data to really make strong decisions. I mean, you have strong waves and those type of things just because we don't have that information. So we're going to take a closer look at this upcoming, especially next year, on what we could do a little bit better to illustrate where we're at and what we're planning. And so as you kind of see our cash balance, if you want to scroll down to the revenue to date, significantly higher. Again, this is going to be two things are bringing this is because of the TLC program, and again, this time of the year, in comparison, it makes it much more difficult. But as we get more data points, you'll see that it starts to formulate very similarly to where we're at. The same with expenditures, as you scroll down, Tammy. Now, in this case, there aren't that significant amount of expenditures granted on the percentage of our budget year. So we're pretty stable in this area, but as you can see in the other two, it makes dramatic dips and waves. I'm comfortable for where we're at. We'll know a lot more next month as Jake and I work through our line item budget for this year. And we're going to get very, very specific this year in our line item budget, which we have not done in the past. So it's our plan to really tighten some things up just for our understanding, board understanding, and other employee and staff member understanding to get a better idea of. It might make some dramatic changes over the years as we kind of fine tune that, but it's something of a goal Jake and I have so we can kind of work through our positions a little bit better and have a better understanding. We've had something in place that has been sufficient, but to really keep staff members informed, keep them updated on where we're at, line item by line item in comparison and how it reflects in their program. We just haven't been as good in past years. So we want to take a look at that. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, since we moved the board meeting from 3rd to 2nd, in the first month, there were things that weren't even in there that
Right.
have now come into play, so that fluctuates the result.
Correct. That's exactly right. Okay. That's everything I have in that area.
Any more questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan. Then we move on to D, which is under personnel. We have contracts. I guess I'd probably go with Mr. Ryan if he wants to go through these, or if you just want to.
Yep, we do have, we did have 2 students that were in need of associates. So there are 2 associate contracts. These are both, one at the high school level, actually, excuse me, both at the high school level, for Emma Boza and Kiana Dreyer. Thank you. And then we had an additional number of positions opened with the master contract that we placed on the back page that may have been employed in their capacity, but not necessarily on or part of master contract. One of those being robotics coach for Mr. Engelman, FCCLA leader for Elizabeth Fettis, weight room supervisor for Mr. Engelman, music trip chaperone for Mr. Gullickson, Lakeside Lab sponsor for Josh Martinson, music trip chaperone for Ian Rutherford, a website leader for Aaron Schrader, Lakeside Lab sponsor for Dwayne Spurley, Lakeside Lab sponsor for Ben Boza. And then we left off accidentally last month the 7th and 8th grade softball positions for Laura Hensley and Aaron Schrader. So those are also included.
Anybody had sufficient time to review them? Okay. Then we also have one resignation. Mr. McVeigh resigned from his...
As part of taking the girls' head basketball position, one of the main times in which they work with open gyms and such is during the summer. He will stay on as assistant varsity head coach, or excuse me, assistant varsity coach for the baseball program, the high school baseball program. But it gets to be very difficult to find time, especially since our recent success at the high school baseball level, to find time. So Mr. McVeigh regretfully resigns from that position.
Okay, that is the balance of the consent agenda on the, are there any more questions before I ask for a motion? If not, I would consider a motion.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Coons, seconded by Mr. Gregg. To accept the consent agenda as it's been presented to us. Any further discussion? Without that, I would entertain a motion. All those in favor, excuse me, a vote. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as it's been reported to us indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Move down. We've already had the September spotlight, and so we're going to go down to number 7, reports. We have the middle school, high school report from Heidi.
So with student life, just kind of the kids are getting settled into their classes, and they've been working really hard as I visited those classrooms over the course of along just fine right now. The 6th grade is going to go on a field trip next Monday. No, September 26th, so it's a few weeks from now, to the USD Vermilion, so that'll be kind of a fun day for them. Homecoming starts the week of September 19th. We have our football game on September 23rd. The high school homecoming dance has been moved to Saturday, the 24th. That'll be 9 to 12. And the dance team is going to help with a middle school dance from 6 to 8. So that ought to be a really good time. You guys can all come if you want. Yeah, always need chaperones. Hands where they belong. Yeah. He's in charge of volunteers right there, that guy. As far as instructional information, the focus for this year is really to increase the variety of instructional strategies that teachers use in their classroom and when to use them for student needs. The goal is to help teachers research instructional strategies and also pair those that are already doing great ones to others that might need those. With the work of the TLC, that's kind of what our focus will be at with the middle school, high school. Jan helped me with instructional or learning walks. So what we did was over the course of 4 days, we went into every classroom for 5 to 7 minutes and took a tally of what instructional strategies we saw being used in that window of time. Of course, you don't see everything, but it's just a little snippet. And then that list of what we saw was reported out to the staff, and that is going to be used as kind of our data to know how things are going as the school year goes on. So those visits will continue, and then that information will be reported to the staff. And it helps me and the TLC know kind of what the needs are for the staff. And so each week I send a memo out and giving them, you know, updates on what next week looks like. But in there, there's also highlights for instructional strategies and different things or resources that teachers can use, so they get something new every week. And I've gotten feedback about that. You know, teachers will come in and ask, well, tell me more about this thing or whatever, and then we can connect them with the instructional coach that's really good at that, or if there's resources I happen to have in my office or something like that, we get them connected. So that's what we have going on.
Thank you. Any questions for Heidi? Okay. Moving on to the AD report with Mr. Boza.
Submitted a written report. The only thing I'd like to add to that was the email that I did send out to you today. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It was a very interesting email I received from an administrator at Lawton Bronson regarding the behavior of our students, or our football players on Friday night, and how well behaved and respectful they were. She was very, very impressed and felt the need to share that with me and other administrators. I thought I'd like to share that with you guys. So if you hadn't seen that, check it out. Very nice.
Did you share that with our coaches?
I did.
Thank you.
I do have something for Ben. Visited with Mr. Kramer on this a little bit, but we currently have some sponsors that are not getting paid as far as coaching, cheerleading coaching. I'm not sure about our dance coaching. Wasn't, okay. Did we approve that this year? I went back and looked and didn't see it. Well,
Interesting.
yes, but it's just a one-year contract. And we've just recently approved all of the coaches and all of the sponsors. And I didn't see the dance coach in there or any of the cheerleading coaches.
We currently do not pay our cheerleading sponsors. That's per board directive from 2009 still.
Well, and I explained to Mr. Gregg, and so all the other board members are aware of how we do that. Was the expectation for our cheerleading sponsors, our practices, along with what we have in place for competitions. The reason we've kind of taken volunteers in the past is nobody has been 100% confident of being able to practice every day as what would be considered master contract for cheerleading sponsor. So rather than getting paid, those individuals have foregone getting paid and volunteered their time to have their sponsorship. They have practices, but it might be once a week. It may be kind of in between different events. All events are covered, but the time period in which it goes. may be varied. In talking with Mr. Gregg, one idea that we kind of came up with that might be a strong possibility would be to offer a portion of that contract, since they wouldn't be fulfilling the complete contract by having practices every day. They'd still be fulfilling the need of going to each event, but then would also give them a financial incentive to perform those duties. And then it would also allow us to evaluate sponsorship of those activities also.
And we do have those positions in master contract with amounts there. I'm not sure that we can, I don't know when the board directive was, but we can just say we're not going to pay those people anymore. You can choose not to have the position. If you're not, you can choose to have a cheer coach or not. But if you have them, and we do, then I think they should be paid by master contract.
But would it be the same, since they're not performing all the duties or expectations, as a full, what I would assume would be a full cheer sponsor coach?
Yeah, I guess I haven't seen those, the listings of the expectations of a cheer coach. From what I'm seeing, for instance, from the football cheerleaders, I think they're doing an outstanding job. So maybe they're not practicing as many times as we think they should, but they must be practicing enough to do a good job, and that's really what we're expecting.
I'd be careful. I'd be careful in determining their success in a public performance, because if we get to that point, and maybe this is incorrect in assuming, but if I would have, per se, a middle school basketball coach, my expectation is that they would to receive a contract for that and actually to continue along as coach, that they would have practice every single day. That would be available to them after school, as opposed to letting them determine when practices would be taking place, that I'm only going to practice 3 days a week versus 5 because I think we're performing well enough. So I would be much more comfortable with modifying the amount to dictate the percentage or the amount of practices along with performances than I would be to determine their performance as an indicator for a full contract. I guess what are your thoughts there too?
Yeah, I agree there should be some expectations in that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure a cheerleading coach position would be the same as a middle school basketball coach, in that practices have to happen every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess maybe those expectations should be reviewed.
I guess,
We're saying that some of our sponsors aren't performing a full job because they're not practicing enough.
I guess I need some clarification from the board, because the back page also has certain other positions that are filled by volunteers that we don't pay. One example would be 5th and 6th grade sports. We have a number of 5th and 6th grade sports teams who have parents that volunteer to organize and take them to competitions and open it up to all students. Are we then to pay them as well because they're on the back page?
Well, it's my understanding those aren't school activities. But I could be wrong on that. But yes, if we have it on the back page and it's a school activity, and we are expecting somebody to fill that position, it probably should be paid. If we don't want to pay that position, then you don't have somebody in that position, or you remove it from the back page.
So if we do not want the position, and it's not at a time to go through negotiations to move it from the back page, do I then not allow anyone to volunteer to do that?
If you're talking about 5th and 6th grade sports,
Or cheerleading, anything?
If you
If I've
want,
made the
if you want
choice that I
cheerleading,
don't, if I've made the choice that I do not want to sponsor a cheerleading program this year because of a lack of interest, whatever reason,
right,
and it's not negotiations time, it's September, it's October, and I have somebody come forward that says, I would like to volunteer to sponsor the cheerleaders. These girls have approached me about being cheerleaders. Do I have the responsibility to say, no, you can't, because if I do allow you to do that, I have to pay you?
well, I assume you'd have to decide whether we should have cheerleaders or not. That's the first decision. And if you change your mind that we should have cheerleaders, then if we have it on the back page and we're going to have somebody leading those cheerleaders, then yes, I would expect that they would be paid for that.
Okay. I just need
And
guidance
that's my
on that.
opinion. But I don't see why we're not paying these people to do the job that we have in our master contract.
Because if they didn't do it, I don't know if I'd fill those positions.
Because you don't want to pay somebody to do it?
No, because I don't think that they are, from the last time that we've had discussions at the board level about the necessity of those programs, the directive from the board was that they were not necessary.
Well, if that's the case, it should be a yearly decision, shouldn't it?
All right, that would be up to the board members to decide.
If it's a paid position, then they, as a coach, do they not have to have a endorsement, college endorsement for going through that? So we probably don't have folks who want to use their endorsement for being a cheerleader coach, but we've got volunteers who don't have the credentials, but they want to.
Every one of our volunteers that works with athletes has to have a coaching endorsement through the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners. They cannot volunteer, they cannot work with athletes without it.
So they're all credentialed regardless?
Everyone.
Okay, you answered my question then.
But is that also the case for sponsors and cheerleading coaches?
No,
So they don't
Okay,
need,
that's what I meant.
they don't
That's
need
what I
a
meant.
certification.
They don't need a certification?
no. Yeah, even if we pay them.
On the outside of this discussion, I would recommend that another meeting away from this meeting and find out where we actually do stand. I will tell you this, the cheerleading program is important to the players and the crowd and the cheerleaders, and it must be important enough to somebody that volunteers. So I would say if there's directive to pay them, I certainly, and the board is willing to do that, I certainly would not limit that qualification because you don't want to pay somebody.
I agree 100%.
Okay, so what I would recommend is just get your stuff together.
Well, I think-
and-
I think
That's where we're at. I think actually for the last,
following the board directive.
well,
aren't we, Ryan?
the last 3 years, it was because we actually couldn't get someone to fulfill the obligation of practicing every day. There was no one with that interest to even be paid for that. Now, if we're changing, what would be in case, I guess, if I wanted to practice 3 days a week instead of 5, just throwing that out there, and not being paid at that full rate that is in master contract, I would certainly, consider that if that's, if that would be something that would be acceptable
Well,
to
you
board
mean
members.
adjusted accordingly.
Exactly.
Is that possible?
Well, we've hired half-time coaches before,
That's correct.
part-time coaches before.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be possible.
Okay.
Before we do that, though, I think,
I guess I need some clarification, because I have a coach's handbook that lists the coaches, the coaching positions that we are to offer and the numbers that we have to follow. And that was approved by the board this summer, and on it, it says cheerleading, fall sports, 1 volunteer, winter sports, 1 volunteer. It does not say that I can hire people in those positions.
And I think maybe we just need to have that brought up at the next, just for reapproval at the next board meeting, and we can put in there.
Wasn't it on the last board meeting, Tammy?
Did we approve the coaches ones last month?
I thought it was
It
August,
was a
but
couple meetings ago.
Yeah. But I think what we're getting to the point of where we can actually take this in a different direction, because we, like you said, you're following what was laid out in that coaching perspective, but I think as we get the idea that we could offer something at a half-time rate as opposed to the full-time, we can kind of move on from there.
If we could just agree that some of the, there's people with expectations different than what's down on paper. Perhaps they were passed over, meaning volunteer.
I guess I'm
Gonna
not
modify
understanding
it.
that.
Well, whether you understand.
Further discussion, if you guys would like to come and talk.
Ben, whether you understand it or not, what I'm trying to do is open it up to more discussion so we can get this resolved. That's actually what I'm
Absolutely.
trying to do.
Absolutely.
That's all.
And there
would
seems to
welcome
be,
that discussion.
there seems to be
Okay.
a conflict between the coach's handbook and the master contract that should be resolved.
Okay, before the next meeting, we'll work on that.
Perfect.
That work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've already done the TLC report, so.
Okay, so now we move on to Mrs. Thonstead.
Well, hi. Okay, so elementary, we're in the swing of it, 13 days in. We're moving along rather well. And last week we finished universal screening, which is the literacy, math, and writing assessments that we have to do kindergarten through 5th grade. TK does reading and math, but not writing. So what we use that information for is for identifying our Title I students and our at-risk students. So I wanted to make sure that I talked about that because I know Mr. Gregg had questions last month about ratio, making sure we're staffing enough, making sure that if students' needs are higher or lower, that we're accommodating that. And so I wanted to make sure I brought that up. Because we don't always know exactly who our students are right off the bat at the beginning of the year, it makes it more challenging to really isolate how many students for every staff member for at-risk and Title I. But we're in the process of really looking at that right now and making sure that we're adequately meeting their needs and, if possible, even going above and beyond that. So that's our goal, that's our hope, and I'll be giving more information throughout the next couple months about that. So, the other area that we're really focusing right now is looking at our PBIS goals, and we looked at the data from last year, which is the office referrals. And I know I've talked about it before. They're in the building. It's called ODRs, Office Discipline Referrals. So it basically is about whenever there's a student who's misbehaving or making poor choices, a teacher will notify through a written report, written form. So our goal this year is to reduce that problem behavior of students. And to do that, we're looking at focusing on what we need to do as teachers and staff to really boost the student success in the area of respect, because that was our highest problem area for last year, for the 2nd through 5th grade classes, and that was Haywarden, sorry. And then in Ireton, it was physical aggression, but it's minor, so it's more like pushing, shoving, that area. So we're looking at doing at-risk instruction. So our at-risk liaison will actually be coaching kids and teaching kids about hands, touch, where they're supposed to be hands to themselves versus what happens if someone pushes you. Do you push them back? No. Really trying to get in there and teach the kids what to do in problem situations so that we can reduce those problem behaviors. So that's what our big kind of talk this last week and couple weeks have been, looking at the data to make good decisions. So moving right along. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you, Carrie. Moving on to Mr. Kramer.
I'll try taking over Tammy's. Oh, yeah, it did. start off with the Pepple Silo budget. It's not gonna let me. Tammy, can you bring up yours on there? Go to the Pepple Silo budget, go to your evidence or artifacts. Okay. I may try this. I might be able to do it, Tammy. No. Okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and I can get it, Tammy. All right, as I kind of scroll down, you each had this as evidence as part of our Pepple Silo budget. We completed with the fiscal year 16, and all the ones in green or highlighted on your packet were ones that were completed. Lines were through that were either got sent on to the next year or we decided not to complete those projects. So coming into fiscal year 17, what our proposed budget, we were expecting about 1.2 million in estimated funds for our silo Pepple. In actuality, because of increased enrollment from the last 2 years and because of cost savings from certain budget items, we were able to dramatically increase that. So our actual amount that we're starting this fiscal year out is actually 2.185 million in Pepple Silo. So proposed expenses, and each one of these will actually, I just mentioned them, they will actually come in front of the board for approval before we would make the purchase. But so you are aware, what is on our rotation is an Ironton mower, a general mower, a minivan, a field mower. These are all actually either, for instance, the Ironton mower was on the agenda for last year to be purchased, but it just got moved back because it actually, any of these items that you'll see, we try to keep with a rotation, but if we feel confident that they're performing well, we're not going to just go through because it's on the budget. We might carry it over an additional year. High school riding scrubber. Continued expenses will be our 4-year bus lease, and if you remember, last month, we did vote to approve the skid steer. We have not taken ownership of that, so it's just still on the proposed amount. But once we take ownership, then I'll put that in the actual. Again, on the Haywarden Elementary, the boiler is at a time where it may need to be replaced, so that would be a significant expense. We're getting conflicting kind of information there. Our boiler inspector, who has kind of not necessarily recommended, but said in the near future we'll probably have to replace that boiler. Our maintenance personnel on the boiler have come in and say, actually, your boiler is in a condition that, and comparatively to new boilers, we're better off sitting where we're at because of the upkeep and the maintenance that we performed. We've done a really nice job, and it's in a good spot. So there'll be a strong probability that we'll continue rotating this on for future years, but it'll always be there just in case we were able to experience that expense or have to experience that expense. Hot water heater in the Hayward Elementary, 2-room remodel. That'll be the continuation of Hayward remodels as we kind of progress through the classrooms. This would be a fence that would be similar on the east side of the building, similar to how we have enclosed the Ireton playground. For safety reasons, I would like to have a fence out there so no balls or anything can go into the roadway. This would have a few more openings. It wouldn't have gates like the Ireton one does because of the number of sidewalks around there, but it would provide another safety feature to prevent kids from going into the areas in the street. Next year, our roof projects, as we kind of continue along that process, would move down to the Hayward building where we would add a cover board and membrane to the roof. And then there, of course, the roof consulting expense there. We continue with we would actually start taking a look at the windows in Ireton, which are original to the building. Possibly, right now, you'll notice that the entire wall is all windows in these classrooms. It's a very inefficient because they're not great windows, high quality, and also anytime you put in a window, it's not near as efficient as a solid wall. We'd still keep a number of windows there, but take a look at it possibly enclosing and then replacing those old windows with new, more highly energy efficient windows. A hot water heater, room remodel. Also another thing that once you replace one in one of the buildings, all the other teachers get a look at it. And we replaced a drinking fountain in the high school that has the added feature of being a water bottle filler. Well, that is quite the feature in water fountains today. So I've had a number of requests from other buildings, and actually in both Hayward and in Ireton, there are drinking fountains that do need to be replaced and are at a point we wouldn't just replace the ones that were either newly remodeled. It would be one, especially in Ireton. I think I was talking to you, Russ, and we believe that at the time Russ was playing in that gym was the last time that was installed. So it's been a few years. So we'll take a look at that. Then I also have added, as you can see, the highlighted yellow ones are the proposed items in our budget that have not yet been approved by the board, but so we get an idea of what it would look like as we kind of proceed through our expenditures. One being the Ireton softball improvements. Baseball, any that are in green are already completed. Baseball facility renovation, the $8,000 cost, the track resurfacing. Continuing our rotation of the carpeting and landscaping on the east side of the building. Middle school locker rooms, 2 non-commercial hot water heaters. These are above, we would take a look at. Again, would not replace if not needed to be replaced. Drinking fountain, music and band equipment. This is something that I added to this. We have not been on a rotation for music and band equipment for quite some time. And we're getting to a point where we need to really get back on a rotation to appropriately provide good instruments for our music department. Wrestling room and TSP, of course, are highlighted in yellow because those are possible expenditures, but not approved by the board. And then, of course, we have those expenditures that were after July 1, but are already completed and will appear on this year's fiscal year. And then our carryover, as we were projected last year, we were projected to carry over about $350,000. We would be projected to carry over $780,000 with the current items on this. But as I said before, any of these items before the purchase would come before the board to have approval. So just because they are listed does not necessarily mean that they will occur. It just means that they are a possibility. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Ryan, at the beginning there, you said the skid steer,
That's correct.
and would you have there 25,000?
That's correct.
we only paid 20, right?
We only had the 20, so I had to readjust it, yeah.
Oh, it's
That was projected before that.
Actuals. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
That's not on the screen, there's an actual site.
Thank you for bringing that up, Russ. We had talked when we first discussed that item prior to that month of possibly having to spend up to $25,000. Okay, go ahead.
And then there was and maybe you're coming to this, but there was a janitor's pickup that we weren't going to do because we were doing the skid loader. Did that get moved back a year?
That did not. We actually have not that, we only plan to replace the next one in the rotation, and that's a couple of years down the road. But thank you for asking that, Larry.
But the pickup that we have is going to.
Yes, we are sufficient with that. Thank you for that question. Unless a major thing would happen, which I would not, we don't anticipate anything. The next piece that I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to go in great detail on, but about a month ago, Jake and I were able to sit down with the AEA representative from their business department, and what they're offering is a spending authority projection tool. And as I kind of spoke to earlier about what I'd like to see us look in fiscal management and taking some time to really focus on what we're doing, long-term planning. This is a 5-year projection tool for spending authority, and I'm just going to, you'll hear me talking a lot more about this in the future and a lot more in detail, but I wanted to kind of just expose you to this tool. Really the things that we want to be taking a look at are our percentage goal. This allows us to take a look at, for instance, we currently have a goal, or we're achieving 23% in fiscal year 2015. So this is actual. This is after our auditors have come back, where we carried over 23% of our spending authority. And then, as you can kind of see, the last 2 years. Now, as we kind of move down this line, currently it's listed as a percentage goal, 10%. Actually, the goal that I'm going to be recommending to the board is 15% of spending authority carryover. As you can kind of see, for the next few fiscal years, projection-wise, with enrollment, with our expenditures, we're still above the goal being 15%. When we get into 2021, 2022, you can see us start to decline. What this will allow us to do, this tool, we'll kind of get ahead, hopefully, of any mass drastic changes and taking a look at, we want to be going on the opposite trajectory of what we're currently on. So it'll be very important for us over the next couple of years, without some significant enrollment changes, to really take a look at our hiring practices, determining if we hire for retirements, hire for any moves, or any vacancies. That doesn't mean that we won't need to, because of certain requirements and fulfillments where we see students needing teachers within a classroom or certain certifications if somebody would have to leave. But once, make sure that we're due diligent if we were to not add any new positions based on our projections coming up. What this incorporates is expenditure increases, and it also incorporates taxing information and student increases and special education weighting. So there's a lot of variables in here that allows us to manipulate some things, but again, another tool that we can use to set goals for long-term financial stability within the district. And like I said, I plan to go more in depth as we kind of approach budget, negotiations. All these things are impacted by our spending authority projection tool. Can take any questions, or that'll be the end of what I have to talk about for my report.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. We don't have a bus.
Should be a written report that you should have received in part of the packet.
Oh, the bus report, okay. Pardon me?
What are you looking for?
The bus report.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on this?
I already talked about that earlier, so
Correct.
we're just not getting the labor and parts all put in here. We see $800 for tires, but there's another expenditure in there for like close to $2,000 for tires again somewhere. So it just doesn't give me the feel that I want for the bus report. That's all that's there. It's improved in the last year, but I think there's a little ways to go yet. It gives you the mileage if you want to, when the oil was changed, and then there should be some more. When is our lease up on the buses? Next year?
2 more years.
I was gonna say, I believe it's 2 years, actually.
2 more? Would we lease it for 4 or for 3?
4.
4, okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, any more questions about the bus report? Move on to G, which is board member reports.
Well, yeah, I have some information. We apparently have changed to a program that doesn't print out the attendance report so that I can barely read it. Nevertheless, however, in the month of August, we are at 99% attendance. You know, it's not 99.9, but it's 99%, which is pretty good for that time. However, it didn't leave a list for me professional development. Was there any professional development?
Those first 6 days, I would not have assumed so.
It has family illness, 2 for 1, personal leave, sick days, totals, that's it.
Yeah, I would not have anticipated in that first 6 days.
No professional development.
I would have said 0, most likely.
Okay, so we're still at 99%. All right, that's good. And you realize that we're up from last year and the year before. We ran out at about 89 or 90% 2 years ago. We got by last year at 92% for the whole year. And so we're on our way, and it sounds like from the information that we're getting from these 2 administrators is that we will do better this year. So I think that was one of my goals, is get our professionals in the classroom so they can do their job and do it on a regular basis. And I'm happy with what's happening, so.
And Ken, if you're happy, we're happy.
Well, thank you.
Anybody have any other? Larry? Russ? Okay. And neither do I. Under new business, we have the West Sioux softball complex at Ireton. They're doing some facility improvements that involves the school. Mr. Kramer has got the information and will present it to us.
I think, Craig, are you willing to kind of answer any questions that we might have? You have a proposal. You can go ahead and step up to the microphone, just as you've been waiting so patiently. And
Yeah.
But you're still gutsy enough to wear an Iowa State shirt after the weekend, so.
Gotta be proud.
The Ireton group has really taken a look and been very organized and diligent on their improvements. One of the things that I know was a priority for us is looking at the safety of the facility and things. If you've been over there, well, as I have over the last 10 years, one of the things that always is concerning in that facility was the amount of foul balls and the safety of our fans, and typically our older fans and our younger fans, and the fence height really in softball sometimes isn't necessitated by a large fence. What we've noticed, though, was the safety in question of kids I saw one at the Ireton complex actually during their tournament where a kid who was hit by a foul ball, even standing next to the bleachers. So as part of this proposal, one of the biggest things was new backstop and a side fence that really will incorporate more visibility and incorporate a lot more safety into the piece. Now, as they've kind of they've done other conversations, had other conversations, they've made some other significant improvements to a facility that really hasn't had any major improvements for sure since I've been within the community for 10 years. But as I kind of talk with others, since they really built it, Craig, as I was understanding, is that correct? Not any major, I mean, other little improvements, but nothing significantly major like this project is undertaking.
But 25 years is the last time they think
Yeah.
there has been any significant improvements.
Maybe even more than that.
I believe the backstop wall was put in there 25 years ago.
Yeah. So Craig, who's been an instrumental part in that group for the improvement project, is here to answer any questions, to kind of take us back, any improvements that have been made for sure within the last 10 years. What we have done is worked with the city in splitting the cost for any of the projects. And also, you can kind of see some of the other through that handout, other donations or the city of Ireton. The city of Ireton has pledged $30,000 towards this project. What they come towards us is requesting $30,000 for this project from the school. And I believe there's another $5,000 contingency amount in that request also, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Craig, do you have anything to add to anything that I kind of talked about, or if any board members have any questions for him?
I'm just surprised on the enthusiasm that we've gotten from the community on and being well supported. You know, it started a couple months ago, just a few guys just kind of talking about, well, we should maybe try to put the fence up like we did in Haywarden, and it kind of grew from there once we started to look at doing things. We had more and more people step up and say, no, if we're going to do something, I want to help too, and I want this done too. It kind of grew exponentially. And I'm surprised on how much support we have already gotten. I shouldn't say we have started. We've done a lot of demolition already. We're only moving forward on the aspects of the improvement project as we get the money. And a big thing that Mel wanted me to bring up is the 28E agreement. The sooner we can get that finalized and together, he would like to apply for a grant from, I believe it's Kansas City Royals. Royals and the Minnesota Twins. And that, he's feeling that 28E agreement is going to give us a big boost on being able to get that grant, because it's two public entities working together for a project. I guess we're just asking for a vote if the school would be willing to support the project in Ireton. And last week I took the opportunity and met with Mel. We went through it. It showed that the dugouts have been removed. It showed some stakes were the new ones, how much larger they are, how much safer they are, and how much more access they'll have to things. The batting cage is being moved further down the hill to the east, and there'll be some significant landscaping that's similar, or the similar idea to what we did here, with a two-tiered, the big blocks, planting some trees, some grass for lawn chairs. Your net will be entirely covering everything versus just behind the stands on your complex. It'll be first rate, and one thing that's nice about it is you do have the enthusiasm for it, but the follow-through is there too. Significant individuals have stepped up to the plate that I've seen, and with the promise of perhaps even more from a couple if everybody comes together. let alone, I believe at West Sioux, or here, I think Minnesota Twins contributed at one time to us. And their possibility with the 28E is significant in the way they look at things through the Royals and the Twins. Could be very significant. And so I looked at it, very well put together, I thought. Backstop, there'll be similar padding that's put on the wall. They'll actually have two different ones. One that'll say West Sioux Falcons, and the other one I think will say, what is it, Youth Baseball or Bud Kemper or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think they've decided on the name yet for the,
but it's something to do
for the
with
summer rec program.
And so they are catering to the school because that's how committed they are. And I think it's a good program, and I think it's significant program. I think I seen a total program cost of upwards near $170,000, even though this one says 124. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay.
172,500 is the updated.
There's an
projected
updated
funding
one. I
total.
have the old one. And West Sioux gets in for 30, and the 5,000 contingency would be, I believe, for next year at the end if they need it. If it's not needed, it won't be used. I think you're having a three-sided lime building put up in that deal. I mean, it's some parking.
That was one of the latter things that got added. We had a specific individual that came through and wanted to donate some money and wanted it put towards some excessive or extra parking, or to open up the road so when there's parking on the road,
Parking, right?
you can get past each
Yes.
other yet on the road.
And actually even some parking down on the south side, I believe, where the swimming pool is.
Yep.
For some elder people, for the
Some
handicap and elder.
handicap area parking.
I think my personal opinion is, from what I've seen, it's very, very good. It's very well put together, and I have total confidence that it'll happen in its completeness. So.
We've got a really good committee put together. I mean, a variety of people. It seems like we've had three meetings now. Everybody stepped up to the plate and done their part, gotten things organized, and I think it's going to be a great project, and we just really would like to get rolling on it because spring comes fast and ball season comes early, and we don't know what spring's going to bring.
And I think finally what I want to say that we haven't touched on is the girls softball, which the West Sioux has, will benefit in hundreds of percentages in just having a complex that's really nice, develops attitude and pride and stuff. I think that's where West Sioux stands on that, is for that. That's how I look at it. We all know Ireton's ability to make things happen, and they certainly did here too.
You know,
I'm
just
kind
sitting
of-
here thinking about this, and Craig, it's been well over 30 years, because I can remember the way the fence is now, for the backstop that's gone, that was there already when I was a sophomore. And I've been out of school over 30 years now. So you're looking at less than $1,000 a year investment here, or getting, asking for it all in one shot, but I think it's time. But
Any other questions for Craig or Ryan? As you can tell, when you go over there and you walk through it and you get Mel on you, then we all know who his kid is. So I'm pretty upbeat about it. I think it's great. A lot of attendance comes to these games. I mean, the town views it as an event, so. So we're going to do the same thing here, Craig. We're going to go through these. We'll pull out anything, because these are all action items, and then we'll vote on. Is that how you want to do that, Ken? Or do you want to do these one by one, being that that's different?
I would say we should just go one by one since it's new business.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for the presenter?
I have none.
Okay,
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we contribute 30,000 to this project,
With a
with the
contingency,
contingency of 5,000 if they need
Okay,
it.
and I'll second that.
okay, motion made by Mr. Coons, seconded by Mr. Gregg to approve the 30,000 plus the 5,000 contingency. Any further discussion?
That fits our whatever Pebble silo fund that.
That is
funds coming
correct.
out of.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of the expenditure of 30,000 to the softball complex at Ireton and the facility improvements of 30,000 plus 5,000 contingency indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Move on to the fundraisers. Mr. Kramer.
As you can see, we have a number of fundraisers that different organizations would like to have approved.
Well, at least this time they're on one page.
Good job, Tammy. Good job, Tammy.
First draft.
I understand, but at least they're on one page, so I don't have to thumb through to see what's going on.
Questions concerning this?
You know, if you look at the amount of money that goes through the activities account, to me, it's almost an unbelievable, the fundraiser stuff. It's almost an unbelievable number for a year. No, I'll leave it at that.
Being in a business once. With about 4 or 5 other schools within your district, or within your customer business district.
Yeah,
We ask a lot of our
we do.
retail and other people to support this.
To me, what I saw was about $500,000. I just was looking at the numbers. $480,000 in a year.
And you know, when things were not so good financially here at the school, the percentage that they made up was unbelievable. I mean, we didn't do it if they didn't pay it.
Right.
I mean, but, so when you do have the opportunity, say thanks. And that's why it's important to buy in town as much as you can. But, so, any more discussion on the fundraisers? I would entertain a motion on that.
I'll move we accept the fundraisers as listed.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, Mr. Gregg made a motion to accept the fundraisers as it's been presented, seconded by Mr. Coons. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Larry, when these some others come filtering through, are you going to vote for them?
Well, we'll see at that time, but
Okay.
there, I mean, I understand that, you know, sometimes
Yeah.
come in late and, or new opportunities present themselves. And so I'm
Okay.
sure there will be some more that will be asked.
I'm positive there will be.
Yeah.
Okay, the discussion is over. All those in favor of accepting the fundraisers presented to us indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Mrs. Vasquez, do you want to go through the student handbook on late work policy and incentives?
Yeah, I talked with the staff this year, and we talked about a different late work policy that is kind of a happy medium between preparing kids for the work world where there are deadlines, but at the same time respecting and understanding that students learn at different rates. And so we discussed how there's really kind of two types of work, generally speaking, done in the classroom, where there are some that's practice, and then there's others that's assessment. And so based on that, there's different policies, or there's a different nuance to the policy regarding late work. So student work that is the practice, it's understood that they really need to have that done before they can be successful on assessment. So the time frame on how that is late is a little bit tighter to make sure that that is done by the assessment. It doesn't seem reasonable to think that a student cannot do some practice work and then take an assessment and then turn that practice work in 6 months later or 2 months later, whatever that looks like, because that's way disconnected from the assessment. And then the other part would be that for points can be deducted if they don't get that turned in on time when it's practice. But for the assessment portion of it that really reflects what a student can do and what they know, the students would have until the end of the 1 week before the end of the quarter to get those completed. So if they were sick and didn't take a test, and then they really should get that taken care of in a couple days, but if they didn't and the teacher reminds them and they didn't again, they'd have till 1 week before the end of the quarter to get that taken care of. And there would be no points that could be deducted from that, because that is their demonstration of what they know and can do. So the teachers and I talked about that, just trying to find that happy medium, and this is what we agreed to at this point. I did open it to the teachers so they could research and discuss further and propose any tweaks to it, but this is what we would start the year off with. At this point, it seems like everybody's thinking that this will work just fine, so.
So this is going to change in the student handbook? This is going to be a change,
Yep,
not an addition?
right.
Okay. And that's different than the incentives, right?
Yes.
You just are touching on the late
Yeah.
work policy.
Yep.
Any questions? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Okay, is there a second?
Support.
Been a motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Coons. Any discussion? You've discussed this with Mr. Kramer and everything, I imagine? Okay,
Just one question, is this being implemented currently?
Yep, we discussed it and then wanted to run with it right away at the beginning with students.
Students are well aware of the changes?
I even personally told them all,
Okay.
in addition to their teachers, sharing it with them and that sort of thing, but.
okay. All those in favor of accepting, or excuse me, of putting the changes of late work policy as presented to us by Mrs. Vasquez into the student handbook indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to D, go ahead, please.
Okay, so for the incentives policy, that was piloted last year, just the second semester. So this is written pretty much the same way. The only issue was from what you guys approved this summer for the handbook till now is the like second semester words that were specific, because it was written just for second semester last year. However, it was meant to be implemented, immediately starting the beginning of the school year. So there was just some different wordings and dates that were in there that didn't apply to the whole school year. And then I know that in the future, the leadership team is looking at this as a whole and just looking at some of the pieces, like, are they really getting the results that they wanted? So this is kind of a piece of a talking point. But overall, it's working well. I think there's just a few things that might change And I would bring that before you next month. But for the most part, you know, the goal is to try to honor those kids and give appreciation to those kids that are doing the right things every day. So,
Is this for first and second semester or just second?
it's all year, yeah, first and second.
Okay.
So this is basically what you did, is you're clarifying.
Yeah,
So the open campus for seniors is first semester also?
yeah, I did see, well, it should be up here. Isn't this open campus for study halls for
It
second?
says second semester, so.
No, it should, that second should be crossed off. I think that's where that got lost in this. It was supposed to be crossed off like I did the,
When we put the incentive policy in place last year,
yeah.
we started at second semester, that's why it reads that way. It was
Oh, I
intended to continue through this whole school year.
But it
This
was
would-
meant to start out at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Correct.
And this copy that you have here was supposed to be the fixed version, but I do see here at the top where it says open campus for study halls for second semester. It should be crossed off. The second should be removed. It should actually say, open campus for study halls and senior lounge.
Each semester.
Yep. Yep.
Is there any more philosophy behind this incentive?
When working with the state for the last couple of years on student information about how safe they feel and how they feel that people communicate with them, that they're doing the right things, the data kind of shows that the kids that are consistently doing the right things do not get recognized. And they don't necessarily feel like there's any benefit for doing the right things. So those kids that have a very strong moral compass will keep doing the right things. But those that are kind of on the line, if they see a lot of attention being given for the negative behaviors, they're very easily swayed to the negative because they just want energy and they just want attention at the end of the day. And so the goal is really to try to continue to honor and those kids that are always doing the right thing. And then we're looking for reasonable, easily managed, and inexpensive ways to do that. So we're kind of looking within our system, what can we do to do that for them. So that's kind of the basis of some of these. And we have to work with that because we have to figure out, you know, what's manageable, what's not manageable. You know, what is actually getting the effect that we want. You know, do the kids care about that certain thing? Like senior lounge, I think kids care about that. They take advantage of that, they enjoy that. Some of the other things, we have to look at that. Is that really sending the message we want? And so that's why the leadership team is further looking at this.
To answer a question that Ken approached me with before the meeting started, I take it that's where perhaps the contact you've had about the lunch line came from.
Yeah.
That's where, that was our first discussion, but
Okay.
we didn't have the decisions made before Tammy needed to get your packet out, so that's where there'll be more information.
It is funny how we hear things, though.
Oh, yeah,
Well, it's not funny, but I mean, it's,
there's no secrets.
what's that? Yeah, well, that's the way it goes. So, any questions concerning this?
I'll move that we approve the updates to the student handbook concerning the incentives policy.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Coons to support or to approve the incentive part of the handbook, the changes. All those, any discussion? All those in favor of accepting that, as it's presented to us, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to number 9, next board meeting. We had talked earlier that we're going to either have an additional one or change that meeting to a different date. I guess we can do two things.
We have to have in place a person
By the
before the 8th of October, which would be the week of, or week before our regular scheduled meeting.
Our regular meeting is scheduled for the 10th. Well, that can't be right then.
October 10.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, any ideas?
Is there a conflict with the first Monday of the month with anybody in your meetings?
Just remember,
October 3rd is what I'm actually looking at
this
for
is
a date.
actually probably a pretty important meeting that we need everybody here.
Works for me, the 3rd.
Does that work okay? Okay, we'll have a special meeting, if that would be acceptable for the board.
Just
That
a
we-
special one, and we'll have the regular.
Then we'll
board
have a
meeting
regular on the
following
10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for bills and everything else, I would like
It's
to,
short. What time? 6:30
6:30.
here?
If they're not having something here.
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
Nothing here, Pam? Okay.
Thanks, Pam. So we should be good. So we'll plan on that.
Okay. Special meeting, October 3rd. Next school board, regular meeting will be October 10th, 6:30, both times here. I would support a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Okay. Motion made by Russ, seconded by Mr. Gregg. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Sorry it got so late. Trying as hard as I could. I told my wife I'd be home by 8:30, but when Mr. Gregg and Ben started arguing, I thought it was over.
Actually, yeah, I know. I tried real hard.
I was thinking of Mr. Lenore. He went longer than I did.
It really, I think Tabby threw us off at the beginning with the whole.
Yeah.